Hello and welcome everyone to the first day of August and our next analytics session meeting. Amanda, you've got the first point.
Yeah, I was just looking for an update on the recruiting efforts for the product intelligence engineering manager.
Yeah, last I remember we were in the offer generation stage. I was actually trying to help DL in terms of some of the numbers there because Tim's out. I already pinged her to see where we're at with the offer generation because it looks right now that we haven't gone through the approval chain, and so we'll definitely want to do that. So I'll follow up with you on with more details as soon as I can.
Thank you.
Mhm. Cool. Then while I read through this wall of text, this is a good opportunity for anyone else to add anything to the agenda if they would like to. Just have a couple of different updates for product analytics. So right now, outlining the internal preview of product analytics, that is the first iteration of a larger epic that I started, but then had Sam fully build out and got a lot of good feedback from Sam and Kenny regarding that. So feel free to check all of the epics out. There's tons of links in here, tons of reading material. But basically, for the first iteration, we want to make sure that we get our tracking stack converted over to Kubernetes and deployed into our GCP environment. That way, we can actually start instrumentation for GitLab.com scoped to GitLab.org to start getting some production data and also see how that will scale as we continue to ramp that up. Once we have that, we'll have the production data that we need to start building out what we would think is kind of a good first iteration for a dashboard and start getting that in front of internal GitLab team members to see what their feedback is. But we will also be dogfooding it ourselves because once we collect instrumentation on it, we should see how people are using it. So we get some immediate dogfooding happening there. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of links here. I think we have a really good plan for, I think we have the next 7 iterations kind of detailed out. They definitely get a bit more vague the further we go, but it's at least a really good plan for the short term. And then we'll continue to flesh that out as time goes by. I just want to say, give a special shout out and thanks to Sam for creating all the other offshoot epics and issues and assigning those to me, as well as the Kubernetes fun we've been having last week. I think we made a lot of good progress, and honestly, I think we should be able to get in there this week. So let's see where we go. Like I mentioned, my plan for this week is to get that stack working in GCP. I have to remember how we make changes to our content security policy because I believe that's controlled by Cloudflare. Otherwise, the instrumentation won't work. But yeah, it's all looking good. There's an epic specific to the tracking stack if y'all would like to follow along. Other updates include hiring. So we have those 2 recs open, one for senior backend engineer, one for senior front-end engineer. We have candidates flowing in and out of them, but we have 2 that are close to the offer stage. Hopefully, if everything goes well, they should be starting in 2 weeks' time. So I'm really excited to have more help there on the analytics side of things. And then in case you missed it, have a couple of other links. You probably saw these in the Slack channel, but just kind of wanted to signal boost these. We have some interesting user interviews. It's been interesting to see the different experiences people have been having with product analytics. So if you're curious about how others are using it, then yeah, check those links out. And then finally, Sam has made a number of edits to our direction page to clarify use cases we're not pursuing, different personas, and a number of other different edits that were announced in the channel. I just wanted to call that out if you wanted to re-review that.
And on those, we're definitely still refining those personas and use case. So if you have questions or comments or feedback, please share them so we can continue to iterate on that. Because I put a lot of these MRs together as I was getting up to speed and had some questions on how do these differ from our normal GitLab as a whole personas. And I think as we continue to do more and more interviews with users, as we understand the problem space more, we're going to need to do even more refinement to really have all that nuance for who our users are captured compared to a general GitLab user for each of those respective personas.
Thanks, Sam, for the clarification there. Amanda, you had a question.
Okay, so I think I answered my own question. I was looking for the link to the dogfooding, but I think it's, now that I read it, it's iteration 1. Speaking to that, some questions there. I see you're saying that you're going to set up instrumentation on GitLab.com. what tool are you using for that? For specifically for the instrumentation? Is this Snowplow? Is this Redis? Like, what are you using? I don't know if
So
tool is the right word.
yeah, so it's going to be the Jitsu JavaScript library that's going to be hopefully plugged into our Jitsu rolled out onto GCP. That's part of the work, because we want to understand how all of this is scaling to production traffic as well. That's another side of this. In addition to building the internal preview, we want to make sure that all this stuff is able to scale, or at least we have a plan for it. So Jitsu is the short answer.
What is Jitsu? Can somebody give me a non-technical answer?
Just a way to emit events and collect them and pipe them into whatever data warehouse you want.
It is Snowplow without Snowflake and all of the things downstream from that.
Okay, thank you. And what metrics will you be instrumenting? Is it going to be like a pilot group, like you're going to replicate everything that a group has currently, or are you doing something different? Like what's driving what you're instrumenting?
Right now, we're just going to stick with page views. One of the edits we made was we weren't sure exactly what events we want to track yet, and we'd rather just have an idea of what we want to track specifically rather than trying to collect data on every possible action. So page views is just standard at that point. So we just want to start there and then figure out, okay, what are we actually curious about? And then maybe set up some funnels and things like that based on that. But as far as user event actions and things like that, there's no plan yet.
Okay, and one last one before I
Sure.
give it to Mikolai. Sorry, and where is the data going to go? So you're saying this will not go into Snowflake?
No, not right.
This will stay in the product and then be made available within the product using the analytics framework that you're creating.
Right. So the tracking stack consists of Jitsu, which is the data collection and piping, and then ClickHouse, which is where the data will be set to and stored. And then we'll be testing out Cube to just see how it's able to query and set up the schemas for that. And then from that point, we'll be setting up dashboards to consume from the Cube API.
It might be helpful if we drop a link into the proof of concept Tim shared in Slack a couple of weeks ago. That really shows an end-to-end demo of a user interacting with the web page, where the data goes and where the visualizations and reporting is served back.
Okay,
I'll see if I can find the link to that and add it to the agenda.
Sorry, Mikolai. This dog fooding is not an attempt to replace anything that currently exists for purposes of reporting and understanding product usage at GitLab. This is just proof of concept learning for purposes of the customer facing feature, right?
Yes, this is all in support. Yeah, so that's actually a really good point, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. Where this is not intended to replace any instrumentation we have set up right now. This is to support us building the user facing analytics features so that they can potentially implement it for their own products. Right now, what we're doing is just setting up the stack, making sure it's set up, we're running in our environment, and that we're able to collect that so that eventually we can get other customers into that stack so that they can start collecting on things that they want to like for their own products.
Perfect.
So we're dog fooding for the purposes of making sure that this works for customers before we say, hey, customers, play with this, and then finds out that it doesn't scale, doesn't do something X, Y, or Z. But that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
I think it might, I think that it might. So immediately when I heard dog fooding, I thought, oh my God, how is this going to affect everything we do? So that puts my mind at ease. But once it gets a little bit more sophisticated and you're actually at feature level or event level rather than just page views, it would be good to kind of replicate what some groups have been doing, right? And then do side by side to see where the gaps are.
Yeah.
Not to say that they're not to say they're doing it right now, like what they're doing now is the right thing, but at least you can find the gaps of what they're used to receiving.
Definitely. I mean, it's going to be good to see how we're doing instrumentation across the board at GitLab and see how that could be implemented with product analytics. There's nothing stopping us from replicating that, but I want to be clear that the intention is not to like replace anything, at least right now. The goal is just one, it's a good opportunity for us to see if this works and get this running on GitLab scale.
Got it.
My plan is just to literally ramp it up from like 1% traffic and go from there. Because we literally we're in progress of making this work from a Docker Compose file to now Kubernetes, and so we want to make sure it scales. or it can
Perfect.
scale. So, but yeah, thanks for bringing
Thank
that up.
you.
That's actually really, I was getting the sense from your answers. I was like, no, this isn't trying to like
Yeah.
overwrite your work or anything
Yeah.
like that. This is literally, and that's going to be something that's worth reminding as well, is that there's a distinction between us using it to drive feature development and then building the feature, as opposed to like, there were a lot of discussions before about, well, what data do we want to track? And it's like, well, let's remember that this is just for us to build the features for other customers to track what they want. This is not, intended to replace any system, at least at this point in time, as far as I know. So yeah.
Great. Nikolai, good point. You want to verbalize?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. So since it's awesome that we're making so speedy progress, but I just wanted to point out one concern. If we are going to enable any kind of additional tracking on GitLab.com, I want to make sure that we are aligned and following our commitment towards the privacy protection. And the third point of this commitment is about us announcing anything that we are going to track. And so it is a kind of user tracking, because wider community can interact with the GitLab.org group. So it can be a data that is not only GitLab employees, but also the wider community. I wonder if we should announce this in some form of blog post or whatever kind of different announcement that we are going to enable new tracking and what for and what's going to be tracked. So we are not creating so we are not breaking our policy, because this can severely impact the trust that we are very hardworking to gain from our community to give us data so we can improve our product.
I 100% agree. Right now, there is no intention to scope this beyond GitLab team members. This is just a way for us to get production scale data, at least from how we're using it, as opposed to what Tim was doing, which is running CI pipelines to simulate traffic on the proof of constant instance. So as far as for one, even when we do open it up for GitLab team members, I'll definitely want to notify that, hey, this is something that we're looking at doing. But right now, there are no plans to actually expand that beyond GitLab org. It's just one thing we really wanted to do is be able to like open it up to something that was real, like operating in production. And so that's why we picked GitLab.com. But the intention is not to start, at least with this internal preview, and for at least the next few iterations, to open this up to anyone that's not part of GitLab right now. I don't think.
I'm sorry. Are you going to instrument GitLab.com or GitLab org? Like, are you instrumenting projects that only internal GitLab uses, or are you instrumenting GitLab.com?
That's actually a good point, because we have some core team members that aren't part of GitLab, right?
Well, if you're going GitLab.com, we absolutely have to declare that we are taking this data. Whether we're using it or not, we're collecting it. If it's GitLab org and not GitLab.com, if it's internal projects, there's still the core people. Yes. So it wouldn't hurt just to make that clear.
Yeah.
On the commitment page. I think it's as simple as, like, Sam, if you could, on the page that's linked, have just a subsection that's like product usage data collected for product development as the subheader, and just say there will be times that during the course of developing for our product analytics, whatever, and link to the vision page, that we may collect unidentifiable data for use of our development process. It's not taken out of our product, blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's enough. And then I think you are free to continue as long as you stay non-identifiable.
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't think there'd be any issue with that. I mean, to Mikolai's, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Mikolai? Is that it? Okay. To your point earlier, I mean, I think there's a benefit in over communicating what we're doing here, just because it's better to be transparent, and it also generates excitement for this new direction around product analytics. I think a blog post would be perfect to not only show people what we're doing, but also gives us an opportunity to say, this is the future we envision. We're going there. Please contribute. So they can see it's a public what we're doing, as opposed to a why do I have this cookie now, or this tracking link, and a link to something that looks more like a legal document inside the handbook. So agree. I think a blog post is great. I think handbook updates are great. We definitely need to be explicit rather than people discovering this on their own and inventing that story themselves.
Sam, that's so Yeah, that's right on. What we've learned, Sam, for those who have been around a while, from Telemetry Gate 2000 and whatever, is people were most angry about the failure of communication, of proper and thorough communication. They also didn't want to share their data, but they were imagining, they were filling in the gaps that they didn't have the information of what was going to happen because we didn't give that information. And so they were angry about things that we weren't even intending, or at least at that moment weren't intending. And so the more we can over communicate, I think the better, and just very transparent. And this is a really good story. This is adding to our feature set. This isn't actually taking more information from somebody. We might use some for purposes of development, but ultimately the end goal isn't to take more privacy from the user. It's to give developers more tools in their toolkit. So it's a really nice story. I love the idea of a blog. I think that's right on. Let me know if there's anything I can help with there.
Sure. Yeah, we'll definitely get something put together before we do a full rollout. I think we have a lot of steps to get there before we're at there, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, and we'll definitely do before we push the button.
Yeah, for sure. There's it's happening fast, but we want to make sure we're not tripping over ourselves too. But yeah, I mean, right now the focus is just make sure it can run on GCP, and then we can actually figure out the details of yeah, how we want to roll it out. But that's
Maybe a
great
nuanced
call-outs.
question. Would there be any similar concerns to this if we deploy it to staging.gitlab.com? Because that's only internal team members, correct?
Yeah, there's no external access to staging, so that you wouldn't have to communicate at all if you put it in staging. You would want it to communicate internally, but yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
but that would be a good step towards while we prepare like the outward communication.
Totally.
For .com. So yeah,
Yeah.
Again, this epic specifically, I don't think exists yet. But what we'll say is that yeah, we'll probably want to start in staging as we can put together the blog post and then communicate it out as we roll out to .com. So yeah, great points. Appreciate the discussion.
And since we're on the dog fooding topic, I also added an issue link to where we'll want to put these product analytics tracking pieces in whatever screens we put together to show dashboarding, reporting. The issue's brand new, so it doesn't have a lot there, but you can follow along. That's where we'll be doing some of that dog fooding work.
This is really exciting stuff, team. Very exciting.
Yes, we are looking for feedback. There are tons of epics. There are tons of reading to be done. A lot of link spaghetti. So if there's points of clarification or just general feedback you have, please feel free to chime in. But it's exciting. Going from no epics, and now we have a lot of epics. So there's a lot more clarity. We'll keep working to drive more of that. But definitely looking forward to some more feedback from everyone. Well, that was my wall of text. I'm happy to talk or see if anyone else would like to share anything else that's going on with them. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, we can get some time back. All right. Well, it's 5 minutes back. It's good to see everyone. Have a good rest of your Monday, rest of your week. Take care.
Thanks, folks.